bit. We're going to show you people who's coming in late all the time, and we're starting on time, 10:30. Let's all get on our feet. Say it on. Clap your hands.
Anyway, I'm just picking on you, so don't get mad. just fiddling around.
Doing great. All right. The biggest thing that's different about Wednesday is a big thing, and it's important. Once COVID started and we started having Wednesdays kind of off and on here and there, in and out, we shortened it to an hour because we dropped music altogether. And we kind of decided, at least I kind of decided, that shorter was a little bit better because it's a school night. So starting this Wednesday, we will start at 6:30. If you come in here at 6:40 or 6:45, we're going to be glad you're here, but you're going to miss. We're going to start singing at 6:30 if the band is the only people here, because we will only be able to do music for 30 minutes. So at 7 we'll break for our classes, and we'll go from 7 to 7:45. So what is the difference? Does anybody catch that? 15 minutes shorter. And I've talked to some parents, and they're grateful for it because it is a school night. Some of our families come from Sebring, out of town, here and there, and everywhere. So instead of 8 o'clock, it will be at 6:45. 6:45. And that will give parents and kids a 15-minute head start getting out of here. What did I say, 6:45? Well, you know what I'm talking about, right? Well, no matter what I say, make sure you hear the right thing. Don't listen to what I say, listen to what I should have said. Anyway, 6:30 to 7:45. So again, being here on time will mean a whole lot to everybody, because it's really tough to start these songs off at the beginning when we're trying to be really rowdy and everybody's coming in 10 minutes late. So I'm not going to pick on you, but just get it in your head. We start at 6:20. Let's just say 6:20, you know, and then maybe 6:30 work out. So this is our first official Wednesday night with our classes back in session, and I know they're all going to be really good, so please be here. Please bring someone with you. Cross-cut people, I just want to encourage you, make sure you talk to some of the cross-cut people that we have lost track of during the summer months. Remind them that we're meeting, we're back here again, and go get them, go pick them up, drag them along with you. That would be awesome. Okay. One other little thing, and it shouldn't even have to be said. Last Wednesday we fed everybody. You need to know on Wednesday night we do not provide food for everyone here. The little kids' classes, they will have a little snack in there of their own. And Crosscut, part of what we do at Crosscut involves food. It just needs to be with teenagers. Now, adults, if you cannot meet for 45 minutes without having to have a snack, come and see me this week, okay? We'll counsel. So, do not come Wednesday nights expecting to find food. The food will be for the teenagers and little people. Your food will be in your classrooms, the snacks we have for you. It doesn't sound like it's an important thing, but it causes a lot of confusion on Wednesday nights. So, don't go and steal the Crosscut goodies, okay? They're designed for them. Any questions about that? Some of you going, man, I'm not going to come now. No pizza? Anyway, now and then we'll feed everybody on occasion. Okay, anything else on Wednesday night? Can I cover it? Something I want you to be praying about. It's not too early. You may think it is, but for me, my deadline is in 2 weeks. This is not real life church stuff. This is Power Line Production stuff. We are making a decision about Bethlehem/Shepherd King. One would be in the arena, the other would be over in Sebring. We do have problems in Sebring at this point with conflicts with the dates, which is odd even though I set those dates 18 months ago. Somehow mysteriously they are a little different. And as of this point, it's not even doable. So we're not sure yet. And we've not made a real decision that we're moving ahead with either production, but I would say it's about 90% sure that we'll be doing one or the other. So please pray about that, keep in mind. And I have to make this decision by the middle of September. Because if we do Bethlehem, for instance, it is now only 3 months and 1 week away. That's how close it would be. And it's a gigantic project, as you all know, for those of you that were involved in it on any level. And better if we do it again. So it'll be a little more of a challenge. My wife's not in here, is she? Oh. When I said we'll make it a little better, I was expecting to get darts. You know, not literal darts, but you know, the ones that come from the eyes. You know them, guys. You've seen them before. Anyway, please pray about it. This is a really big deal. You may think, well, that's cool. We're going to do one or the other. That'd be great. I can't wait. I'm living with this 24 hours a day and have been for several months right now, trying to weigh out all of the options, and there are always, as they say, monkey wrenches that get thrown into the middle of it, and that's happened this year, of course, something out of my control. So just pray about it and think about it. If we could have our prayer list up, or you want it, and let's go ahead and bring our lights down, Chris. Our kids do a little better when things are kind of sedated in here. Okay, please listen. Kids, you're doing really, really well. Just listen carefully. I did actually have some communication with Carrie this morning. I know some of you have been probably trying to text her. She doesn't feel like talking or texting, but she texted me back this morning, probably because it was Sunday, and she was about to get a blood transfusion. I'm getting conflicting information about her situation. All I can tell you is that it is very serious. So most of you know she's fighting stage 4 cancer to begin with, but now all kinds of complications have arisen. She's in the hospital in Lakeland. She is desperate for our prayers, so we're going to pray for her. Linda Garland also is in the hospital over in West Palm Beach. She had, I don't even want to say 15th, 16th, 17th surgery in the last 3 years, whatever it might be. And George will be heading back over there tomorrow. So she is there, and George, everything is still okay right now? George Garland?
Right.
He's got his head in the computer. Everything okay with Linda so far still?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Did somebody go up? Randy? Yeah. Okay. Oh, I couldn't see the thumb. All right. But keep them in your prayers, plus so many, many more. This is our continued list. Sue has been in the hospital, in general, she's home. All the others are just as important. I know Phil Bumpy, he's not on our list here, but a lot of you know Phil. Had a heart surgery, but he's had a lot of complications, and he is still in the hospital, to my knowledge. And in most cases, with the surgery he had, he would have come home the same day, but I think he's been there over a week. Yeah.
He's in the hospital, but he's doing really well. We should hope.
Okay. Doing much better. That's good to hear. Okay, we have some other names as well. I know we have another list that's even longer. I don't know if you can pull that up. But...
There's not a current list.
Okay. Okay. You have people to be praying for, I know that. And while we sing and worship, we just want to encourage you. Talk to God about these people. We have seen people's lives turned around, literally, with prayer. Now, God does not always give us what we ask for, but please talk to Him because He does listen. And we will not receive if we don't ask. Don't demand from God, but ask Him humbly and gently, as a child who loves their Father. While we worship during this next song, just invite you to have communion. If you're not normally here, then you may not have seen the communion packets. They're on the table in the back. If you would like, while we're singing, just go on back and get one. Everybody's kind of on their own as far as taking communion. I do want to mention to the parents, please listen to me carefully. It needs to be said. It's your choice what you do about your kids having communion. I'm going to share my opinion. That's all it is. That's all it is. I think it's best for kids to wait to have communion once they've made an actual decision to accept Jesus, which is typically followed by baptism. In most churches, you never take communion until you're baptized, but we're not all about rules here, but I don't think it's wrong for your kids to take it, but you need to be sure they really know what it is, and it's not just a novelty, just a little treat, something that's fun to do. Because when that happens, it takes away from it for them down the road later, I think. So pray about it. It's not something just to let all the kids take part in because it's fun. So, and you're not being reprimanded or corrected. I don't know who does or doesn't. I don't watch. And nobody said anything to me. It's just something that I felt like I wanted to share with you and do every now and then. Alright, as we worship kids, I want you to be really quiet. Even if you're not taking communion, this is when you should pray. Because God listens to you too. Don't think because you're kids, your prayers don't matter. In fact, there's a lot of times where I've asked little kids to pray when I really needed somebody to get through. Because Jesus said, unless you become like a child. So that's very important. Holy water.
Knees again, God, I'm begging, please.
and one that's so great I've rarely seen it, Lord. Please help her right now. And I know the obstacles she's facing are tremendous, but I know that she can beat them with your help. If you so will it, God, we want to keep her around, Lord. And for Linda, we thank you for the progress she's making. Please, get her home safely and soon, Lord. For Phil Lumby, Lord, and Sue, and for all the others, God, that we don't mention by name, that we are constantly in prayer for. Please touch them, God, in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, before we let our kids go, kids, I need all of you to look right up here at me real carefully. I know that you all love the Lord, you love Jesus, and you like being here. But I am getting stories that even Miss Bev, now she lives with Mr. Cleve, keep this in mind. Her patience is a mile long. But I'm hearing, kids, are you listening to me? Because I'm going to be checking personally. When I was growing up, we didn't have children's church, junior church. I sat and listened to the sermon every week from the time I was a baby. I sat there, and if I moved, my mom smacked me. And I always had a tie that was real tight, not like this one here. Because I wear this one to be, because I want to wear it. But we had our suits and ties on. We sat there like perfect little soldiers most of the time. It's a privilege for you to be able to have your own class and classes and the things that we do. You need to listen to Miss Beth and Miss Diana, whoever's doing the teaching. Then you need to listen to your trainers in the other rooms when you're going through the discussion. And I'm hearing that you're not doing that, and it's disappointing. So parents, I'm talking to you too. I don't know any specifics, so I have no names. I'm just being told the entire class is like a herd of wild critters. Maybe we shouldn't call it the zoo. Maybe we should. Kids, I know you're going to do better. That's what God expects from you. And we make it fun. I know we do. I happen to know that. It's not like that everywhere. You still learn. So you can go at this time, and we're going to see something totally different today, Miss Beth. So we'll be looking for a report. you back there somewhere? So running off and away. Diane. I need my phone and my Bible. I left them both back there. That could be a problem. I'm not expecting a phone call, but there's something on my phone I need to read.
You got your water?
I think I'll take water too. I've had 3 weeks of this weird respiratory stuff. It's getting better. And now that we're singing Wednesdays and Sundays, my voice is not, all kinds of Bibles to pick from. I'll take the large letter edition, thank you. I'm going to read it from the screen anyway. I just like to have a Bible close by. This one's got something extra stuff to it. Give me 1 second. Let's see, bananas, 6 peaches, basketball. I have so many things in here that I either want to use today or another day, and I don't get rid of them until I know I'm finished. I'll make sure I'm somewhere close. You have a pair in here, or? Let's pray. Lord, we just ask for your direction today. God, you know this, I've struggled this week. I would like to preach unless I have something I think you gave me. I can always say something, Lord. Yeah, Lord, you know I traveled down 3 different roads this week. I finally picked A instead of B and C. God, I'm trusting you. These are the things that people need to hear today. And I just pray that you would open our hearts. Because this really isn't from me, God. I may be the one up here talking, but Lord, we pray these messages come from you. And they come through different people, Lord. They come through songs and prayers and just the smiles on people's faces, Lord, the words said, the hands shaken, and the hugs, and the preaching, Lord. We trust you. I don't know where everybody is today. I mean, I know a lot of people are not here, but I'm talking about where we all are spiritually, emotionally this morning. We've all come from different homes, Lord, different circumstances, different families, different kids, parents, Lord, and we bring with us stuff. Lord, I pray that you help us to lay this stuff down and just listen to your word, God. And that you would, Lord, do something in our lives today, God, that would make a difference and help us to know why we got up and why we came here today. We thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Last week we talked at length about the parable of the Good Samaritan, so I can't go through the whole thing again. And it was really very powerful information. And we talked about Mount Everest and the people left on the path there to die and those sorts of things. And compared that to what happened to the man who was beat up on the road between Jericho and Jerusalem. And finally the Good Samaritan helped. As you remember last week, or if not, you probably remember the story from some other time. The man was beat up lying in the road, I think so. And two very, quote, spiritual, high-up spiritual people in the Jewish world walked by and left him laying there, basically in a pool of blood, and did not even offer to help. One was a priest. That's as high as you can get in the Jewish world, spiritually speaking, unless you happen to be a high priest, and there was only one of those officially. Sometimes there were others that sort of carried the name that was more of an honorary title. During the time of Jesus, the high priest was Caiaphas, and Annas used to be the high priest, but he still is known as a high priest. Anyway, so this was a regular priest, but that's way up on the ladder. Okay? They held him in high esteem. They walked by, and then the Levite would be somebody like a very dedicated servant in the church today. It could be, in this case, it would have been a man from the tribe of Levi, descendants of Aaron, Moses' brother. But today it could be a man or a woman, it wouldn't matter. Just someone who serves God with a lot of commitment and sincerity. So, they both walked past him and left him to die. And finally, it was this man who was laying there on the ground beaten up. It was his enemy. Somebody he probably talked bad about. Somebody probably called him dog about. Said, I'd rather, spend the night in a house with a dog than with a Samaritan. That finally stopped and helped him. So most of us know that story, even people that really don't ever maybe attend church services. Most people are familiar with that story to some degree. But I thought about it this week, and I thought about going back there and staying there, but I'm not going to. But I want to ask a question. Out of the priest and the Levite and the Samaritan, I wonder which one slept the best that night. Think about it. The priest went home. His wife welcomed him home, his children. Oh, it's such an honor to be the priest who gets to serve this 1 week out of the year, and he's gone. He's done his priestly duties. He's done all kinds of important things. People have looked up to him. They have just marveled at him, that he's such a spiritual man. He's just so close to God. All these things. And he evidently left probably feeling pretty good about what he'd done. I have a very special place. I'm a descendant of Aaron. I'm of the tribe of Levi. And not everybody can be a priest. We're the only ones that get to be priests. But he had to go home and eventually hit his bed and lay down. Now, Jesus doesn't talk about it, so this is just me just imagining. I wonder how well he slept that night. I hope he didn't sleep well. I hope he was bothered by the fact that, hey, I'm supposed to be a leader in the spiritual world among all the Jewish people, and I left a man to die on the road. And I had just come from the holy temple in Jerusalem, where I had worked in the holy place. Now, they had gone into the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest did that once a year. But they had worked in the holy place in the very inner sanctum of the temple. Just wonder what went through his mind that night. And the Levite, he as well had gone to the temple, and like many of us, had done all sorts of duties. He was a true servant. He did things that people looked at him with great honor and admiration. And he probably came home. I wonder if when he laid down that night, if he felt good about his decision. Now, these guys could have been so hypocritical, everybody. Listen to me. So hypocritical that maybe they did lay down and sleep perfectly well. I would hope not. But the one guy that did sleep well was the Samaritan. Now, I don't know that, but I'm pretty sure of that. He had risked his life. He'd spent his money. He'd used oil and wine, which were very valuable commodities. People carried them, and it's not like they could just run to 7-Eleven. Are there even 7-Elevens anymore? I'm going to put saying, to a little convenience store and pick up a little extra olive oil or whatever. Wine was more plentiful. Olive oil was very expensive, but it was used for medicinal purposes a lot, whereas today it's used for cooking. Diane puts it even on watermelon and things like that. But anyway, I made that part up. I'm sorry. There is a religion. We will go into it another time. When it comes to olive oil and tomatoes and basil and pasta. I grew up with spaghetti. It was the long stuff. And I didn't know. It was a cardinal sin to call these things by the wrong name. Now, I have my own names like bow ties and little curly cues, things like that. They don't go over real well, so I never say them at family dinners. But anyway, how to get off on that? So easily distracted, weak minds. But this stuff was very important to these people, so that they used it with great care and with, thinking, a choice. He used what he had. Then he put his money out. Now, he could have just set the guy outside the door of the inn. Kind of a motel, basically, for travelers. And hoped that, I brought him to a safe place. He's not out there in the road dying. Somebody will probably help him. No. He said, look, will you take care of him? And he paid the guy. So he paid for his room, and he paid for for his care. So he would feed him and treat him as much as he medically could. But he went even further. He said, I'm leaving, but I'll be coming back through here, and I'll pay you anything more that I owe you. Wow. I bet he slept really well. And I bet he was blessed by God. Where the people who, quote, carried the very high spiritual titles went to bed, as far as I'm concerned, unjustified, with God not being very pleased with what they had done. I think that most of us want, especially one thing in life, and that's happiness. Now, a lot of us realize that happiness comes through Jesus Christ. Happiness comes through family and friends and things that we do, places we go, things that we learn, experiences that we have. But and we know by our own Constitution and Declaration of Independence that the pursuit of happiness is supposed to be basically a God-given right. Now, not every country has that written into their governmental documents, the things that govern their lives, but our country does. But even as a Christian, I would say when we boil it all down, we are pursuing happiness, which for us includes a lot of things. But the problem is, in our world today, the people that pursue happiness, which hopefully is most everyone, most of the time are pursuing all the wrong things. And we've been guilty of the same stuff. We really, in our culture, feel like if we can get a few more things, and I'm not picking on anybody, I like things too. I like nice cars and a nice house and nice clothes and and good olive oil and really good tomatoes. I like all these things. And they can bring happiness to me, but not the kind of happiness we're talking about. Not what we need. It will always leave us short. Now, even family, as deep as that is, from what I read in the Scripture, if that's as far as things go for us, and God has no place in the picture of our lives, then even family will leave us coming up short. When it's got to be way up there at the top, we know that. We're supposed to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, and mind. He is supposed to be at the top. And that's where real happiness and joy is found when we pursue it. What I've noticed, I've had the opportunity to go out of the country a few times. Some of you have never been out of the country, some of you have been out of the country way more than me. But I've been down into the Caribbean islands, different ones, 4 different times. And visited, I think, 6 different islands altogether. And all of them, except for Puerto Rico, was a little bit different, because it's got the influence of the United States, obviously. And a lot of what we have flows there, although sometimes that falls really short too. But on all these other islands, spent time on Jamaica, Grenada, and Barbados mostly. And what I saw on all of these, and some of this time was a long time ago, and some of it's been the last 20 years. Now, I know things change as time goes by, but poverty is a very hard cycle to break out of. They're so poverty-stricken. And the last place I went was Grenada. I remember visiting a woman, and she was so grateful. She had just gone and had all of her teeth pulled, and she was grateful. No Novocaine. She didn't think anything about that. She said, yeah, no, they don't know. Just pull them. She had a house full of kids, and she lived in a house no bigger than any of these classrooms, as did almost everybody there. There were people who were wealthier. They had houses that were more similar to what a middle-class house might be here in our country. But they were few and farther between, and they were particular neighborhoods. We happen to be staying in a fairly nice house, what might be considered a middle-class house, and that down there, what might be considered a house for the wealthy. We were staying with a missionary there, but when we went out to visit people, all of their houses were 4-sided little buildings about the size of a shed that you would have in your house. But here's what I noticed in Grenada, in Jamaica, in Barbados, all these places, and I know some of you have seen this before. I know Randy spent a bunch of time in Central America, and some of you have come from there or been there at times. They were remarkably happy. They were. Now, not everybody, every group of people has its scoundrels and its grouches, and all of those people that live on the wrong side, get up on the wrong side of bed every day, and are negative about everything. But by and large, the people in the third world, and this has been studied by sociologists, I've heard people talk who are experts in the field, and I saw what I saw with my own eyes that absolutely confirmed it. The people in the third world, except for those that are absolutely famished and at the point they are literally starving to death, which there are dying by the thousands every single day all around the planet. I don't even know the number anymore, but it's very high. It's in the thousands each day. I'm not talking about them. They live in such poverty that there is no joy, no hope there. But I'm talking about the regular folks who live in these places and would be considered a typical citizen. They were happy. They were happy. I remember we went to Barbados and we were going on a youth trip. I didn't really know what that meant. I found out what that meant was a bus with no windows. Well, openings, but no windows. Wouldn't matter anyway. There was certainly no air conditioning in any of the buses that were there. And we got on, and we kept getting on, and we kept getting on, and we kept getting on, till every seat was crammed, and the entire aisle was crammed. And then people were getting into the stairways of the bus and hanging on. And we drove that way about 2 hours, and it was a very warm tropical day. These kids were just beside themselves. They sang the entire way. I remember thinking, wow, we are so spoiled back here. We're a bunch of babies. We'd be crying because the air conditioning wasn't working and because we didn't get a seat. Now, all of you have ridden, if you've been to Disney World, you know what it's like to get stuck standing in the aisle. But those things are all air conditioned, and it's that way in every city when you're on a subway or on a bus. But down there, no, none of these things. There was no air conditioning except in very, very few places. I imagine there's a little more than there used to be. But I remember listening to some of the older high school guys talk. Well, I wondered, what do these guys do? How do they have fun? They were very happy, first of all. These are 17, 18, 19-year-old guys, whatever. And they said, of course, they speak English there. This was Barbados in this particular case. And you could barely understand what they were saying. It took me all summer to be able to really fully understand. And they were speaking English, but just sounded a whole lot different. And I'd like to give you an example, but I would butcher it. But the big thing for them was on Saturday night, they went into Bridgetown, which is the only city on the island, and it is the capital, and they would go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. Kentucky Fried Chicken. I could clearly tell what they were saying. They would save whatever money they could, and any Saturday night they had enough money, that's where they would go. They would have to take more than one bus to get there, and that made their week complete. I complain sometimes I'll have to go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. I mean, I like it now and then, but there's this happiness. Now, it's mostly around Christians. But there was a general happiness I saw on all the islands. When we went to Jamaica after the hurricane that hit down there a long time ago, we took a bunch of guys here from Wauchula. We almost caused a national incident. You might guess that. Guys from Hardin County going down thinking they have to obey rules in Jamaica. Well, you do. And you've got to obey the rules in the Miami airport. Or you end up getting strip searched and locked up. I won't go into any details. It wasn't me. We were putting houses back together. And once again, these were houses the size of these classrooms. 4 walls and a roof, a door, and maybe a window. A wood floor, maybe not. And they were just remarkably happy. And I remember one particular house, the guy said, I want to move my house. I thought, okay, that's cool. We took it over to a cliff with a whole bunch of people slid in, and we dropped it over the side. Now, it looked worse than it did, than what the hurricane had done to it. And so I thought, wow, we could have put this thing together in a day. Now it's going to take us all week because it busted into a million pieces. But we began to put that just so remarkable because there was a guy in the town that owned a crowbar. Now, I'm not saying everybody's this poor, but in this village, we were way up in the mountains, they were. Because we wanted to be able to take some boards off and redo things. They said, well, so-and-so crowbars going to be coming pretty soon. I don't even know what they're talking about. Because I wasn't thinking crowbar, as in crowbar. Because we all have one of those laying in our garage or a barn, or maybe we've got 2 or 3 or 4. There was one crowbar. We waited all day. Crowbar, and that's what they called it, crowbar. He finally showed up, and he was better at it than any person I've ever seen. He worked it with magic. He took things apart, and he was almost like a local hero because he had this tool. We started putting these houses together, and the guys would just come around and sit and watch us and kind of laugh at us. The Americans trying to put these houses together using hammers and regular saws. You know, we're looking around for a skill saw or anything, you know, there's nothing like that to be found. They didn't think a thing about it. Of course, they were remarkably happy because most of them were smoking something about this big around, about that long. They were laughing all the time. Anyway, but I could go on and on and on, and I'm not going to. I just want to make it very clear that having a better car, if you get to trade to a newer car this year, if you finally get to move into a better house than maybe you have, if you get better clothes, if your kids do better in school or they accomplish things, all of these things will not fulfill the pursuit of happiness. They won't. And you will not sleep better. Now, I know getting these things, it can be very comforting. It's nice to have cars you can depend on, or houses that you know are going to stand up, the roof's not going to come down, and they're going to cool when you want them to, eat when you want them to, and all of these things. But there's something way deeper, you guys. It's way deeper. Diane, and that, you'll look at it when I have too much fun, by the way. But anyway, that's to get you back, Luann, for earlier. Could you hand that, just set that bowl down, please? I want everybody to grab one little, we'll start it up here, just hand it around the room. Try to listen, and don't get all worked up over what color little fuzzy thing you can get out of here. Okay. Some of them have eyes, but I don't want you digging around just so you get one with eyes. Just take one and pass it around, and hold on to it. Try not to fiddle around with it a whole lot. Just hang on to it. We'll come back to it a little bit. There's actually a story. It's an old story called Warm Fuzzies. And we've all heard that term, warm fuzzies, and sometimes used in a mocking way, you know, they want to just hand out warm fuzzies. Well, it's better than cold pricklies. The story, I couldn't find the original story, and you may find it if you look harder than I looked, but basically the story, to summarize it, is this. A group of people lived on an island, and they all had a handful of warm fuzzies that they kept in their pockets. And the warm fuzzies basically represented little balls of happiness. Sounds so childish and so trite that you can easily just scoff at it and pass it, but don't. And what they were supposed to do, and what they did on the island for a long time, is that they would give these warm fuzzies away to people. Because they loved them. They were little pieces of happiness, and they shared them with people. And it made them feel really good. Giving made them feel good. Well, eventually, another guy comes to the island. He's a tourist. And he says, look at this. Your warm fuzzies are the most valuable thing you have, right? They all agreed, yeah, the warm fuzzies are good enough. And he said, well, you should keep them. Don't give them away. They're the most valuable thing that you have. And so they began to try his way. They kept the warm fuzzies. And in the meantime, he began to circulate what he called cold pricklies. And he gave them to all the people. And they tried to hand those out. And that's like stepping on stickers out in the woods. You know? Little sand spurs that don't come out of your skin very easily. They begin to hand those around. As the story continues to go, a young person comes to the island that has been away. When they come back, the happiest island in the make-believe ocean. Well, this person convinced them to get rid of the cold pricklies. I don't know if they drowned that guy, I can't remember. And they began to hand out the warm fuzzies. I didn't even look, and I got one with eyes. Cross-eyed, but eyes nevertheless. Now think about it, people. Listen. This is so simple that you can let it slide by. But it's profoundly important. I grew up pretty poor. I've told you that. My kids used to say, Daddy, tell us poor stories. They like to hear them. Like, I used to eat bread sandwiches, and it was 3 slices of bread. And I thought it was fun. I liked it. I made it up. I made up bread sandwiches. I'm sure somebody else has done it, but and I won't go on. You know, there just wasn't ever money. What money there was, we never got it. We never got an allowance, and so we just couldn't come by money. We didn't steal. I don't ever remember stealing a nickel. I wasn't a perfect kid by any stretch of the imagination, but I didn't steal money. But every now and then, my dad would give us a little bit of change. Somebody else, sometimes other people would try to give us money. But we were very strictly taught, and some of you are my age will relate to this. If anybody tried to give us money, I'm not talking about a stranger, I'm talking about a relative, we would always say no. I hated that. This is crazy. I don't have a job, I don't get an allowance. If I wasn't giving me money, I'm supposed to say no because it's the right thing to do. Well, yeah. Anyway, we would eventually get a little money. I remember one year I had collected enough change, and back then everybody wore suits and ties in church, as I told you. Even all of us kids had a suit, even though we really didn't have much money, but we had that suit because we couldn't go to church without it. And my dad always had cufflinks, and I would always take the little boxes off of him. And then like the little boxes that snap closed and shut. And that year I decided I was going to buy Christmas presents. I'd never done that before. I was probably about 10 or 11, and I saved money all year. And it just sounds like I'm not looking for pity at all. I got a point to make here. I used to love Christmas because my parents wouldn't go all out because there just wasn't money to do that. You know, if I wanted the $50 electric train, I was going to get the $99 electric train. And I did, and I still have it on my shelf at home. And it was $9.99 in the Sears catalog. I remember looking at it. My cousin got the $50 one. But anyway, his put out smoke and went backwards. Mine just went round and round. Usually fell off the tracks. But I was so happy to have it. I kept it, and I still have it to this day displayed. But that year I had saved somewhere in the neighborhood of $3. I don't know how I got it, just from my parents tossing a nickel or a dime every now and then my way. I remember going to the store for the first time in my entire life and buying Christmas presents. Now, $3 was more than that, or it is today, but the only thing it would buy were 2 sets of cheap pens, ink pens. And they were actually supposed to be gifts because they were like little gift boxes. But I couldn't buy enough of them for everybody I wanted to give them to, so I had to buy them and break them apart. And we had boxes around the house, so I got big boxes, and get a big box and give my brother a box that looked like maybe he had a model car in there, or something really cool. And what it was one little cheap pen, not like a big pen you get today. But I'll tell you back, listen, I can tell you almost what I received every Christmas of my life as a child, because I have almost all of those things on a shelf at home. I'm sure where that comes from, except probably from being dirt poor. But when I think back on Christmases, that's the one that stands out. Even though I was a kid who didn't get most of the things I wanted, the time I was able to give something to somebody, that's the one I remember. Now you all heard it, it's more blessed to give than receive. This is not a Christmas message, and this is not just about that. This is the question I want to ask you. We live in a really cold world. In fact, I want to read 2 scriptures. Let's look at the one in Timothy first. I think Alicia, not Chris, back there now. I'm not sure. I know there's somebody way better looking than normally is there. Yeah, that's Alicia. Okay. Paul says this to Timothy. Mark this. Now other words, you can take this to the bank. You can count on this. There will be terrible times in the last days. This isn't a sermon about that, but this is, remember the last days? People are saying things to me, like, especially when we went through COVID and all stuff, we go, we must be in the last days. Now, anybody that's really been a serious student of the Bible know that the last days began when? When Jesus left after the resurrection. The last days, the last period of time in human history began. Could we be in the last of the last days? Possibly. Are we in the last of the last of the last days? I don't know. Can't really tell. But the things I read here that Paul told Timothy will happen toward the end of time, they look pretty familiar to me. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy. It's getting scary. Without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good. Treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And that's where I'm stopping on that. If a couple of those don't jump out at you as things you see in our world today, then your eyes are closed. You may say, well, that stuff's always been with us. Yes, during the days of Noah, guys, no matter how bad you think it is right now, it was worse during the time of Noah, because the Bible said it was so bad, God decided to wipe out the entire human race, except for 8 people. And he said, when it gets like it was in the days of Noah, get ready. Jesus is coming back. That's why I know it's not as bad as it's been before. But in modern history, in our days, let's just say for the last 100 years, which we can't all remember that, but we have generations that go back into that in our families, we have seen this stuff run rampant. And we see it around every corner. One more scripture. Jesus said this. Matthew 4:24, Because of the increase of wickedness, these are the words I want you to remember. The love of most, and some translators say that should say the love of many. So, is there a difference in many and most? I guess a little bit. So let's just soften it. Let's just say it means the love of many will grow cold. Many is more than half. Many. Most. Love will grow cold. Kind of like the island of warm fuzzies. When the cold pricklies replaced the warm fuzzies. I'm going to tell you about a Jewish man named Wauchula. Lived in Crown Point. I'm not sure where that was. The story didn't. There's a Crown Point, Indiana, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't there because he wouldn't have ended up in Auschwitz from there, obviously. It had to be that may be where he lived when he wrote the story. As he wrote about his own life, he wrote this. I'm going to tell you why I am alive today. Now listen, because what I'm going to tell you now wraps everything up together I've been saying and what you need to take home with you today. What I need to take home. Ankle was a young guy. He was a teenager. And he was in a boxcar. And if you've ever even been just to the museum in Tampa, if it's still there, they have one of the actual boxcars. They're smaller than the boxcars we see today. But essentially the same kind of thing. A square, a rectangular box on wheels with a door on the side. Basically for hauling cattle, animals, or merchandise. Well, the Nazis used them to haul people as they cleared out one town after another, after running the Jews into ghettos, they called them, and eventually gathering them up. It was kind of a progressive taking of these people's lives. The last straw was loading them into boxcars and taking them to various concentration camps. Yankel went to Auschwitz. He was in a boxcar. The boxcars were crammed to capacity. No room. Maybe everybody sat down. Maybe they couldn't even sit down. Maybe there was someone more on their feet. There was no room. They couldn't do anything about going to the bathroom. They didn't have anything to eat. If they had any personal things with them,
They may have been sitting on their little suitcase or something. All these things were going to be taken from them anyway the moment they got off the train. Well, they didn't know that. Or they may have had more trouble getting them loaded. So they were always led to believe there's something around the corner that's going to be good for you. Like the showers that were really gas chambers, that sort of thing. Angel was in the car, and they moved this group of cars onto a sidetrack outside of Auschwitz. It was one of the more famous, bigger camps. And as they often did, would leave them set there overnight in the dead of winter, sometimes for days. No food, no water. That car set just one night. The temperatures were sub-freezing, way down. It gets cold in Poland, in Europe and those parts. And he saw an old man that he recognized from his own town. Because they would gather them up, so a lot of times they were with their own neighbors when they were taken. And the guy, he said he didn't look like he normally did. He was some sort of businessman, but he didn't say what he did. And he was just literally shivering. And he said he didn't look like himself. He went over to him, and he put his arms around him. It's a pretty noble thing for a teenager, really, to be doing, to have the mindset to do that. And he was worried about him, so he started just rubbing his arms. He rubbed his legs, he rubbed his face, his head, his hands. And he tells the story, he rubbed his body all night to try to keep him alive. Finally, the sun came up. It warmed up a little bit. Light came through the cracks in the sides of the car. And he began to look around, and every single person in the car was frozen solid, except for two people. Him and the old man that he had warmed all night. And he commented, of course he was a Jew, he said, this is Judaism 101. You need to warn people, and when you warn people, it will warn you. That's simple. God knew all that. He knew that. The reason the old man survived is this kid rubbed his body all night, kept the blood circulating, and that's what saved him. Everybody, please. This falls right in line with what we talked about last week and what my theme has been now for months. And I know you may get tired of hearing it every now and then, and we let Jed or Randy or Marlon get up and talk about something else, and everything else is important too. But God called me and convicted me when I was a teenager that I am to preach about love. Because the Bible over and over says it is the greatest of all things. The greatest gift, the greatest fruit of the Spirit, the greatest law. And that without love, it does not matter how spiritual you are. You can be the priest on your way to the temple or coming back from the temple. You can be the Levite coming home. It does not make any difference if it is not drenched and covered in love, then you're wasting your time. That's what God says. Just a bunch of noise. And I fear that a lot of times in our churches, and I'm not being condemning or saying this church is worse than the next or some other church is worse than this. That doesn't get us anywhere. We all need to look at our own lives. I'm going to put it real simply, and this was only part of my sermon. I'm just going to leave the rest of it because I'm never going to get there. Do you warm people up? When you enter into people's lives, when you encounter them at a store, at home, in the car, on your way from church, to church, at work, wherever you might be, when you enter into a conversation, for instance, about anything, and as people, our conversations tend to go a typical conversation usually leads us into talking about other people. Have you noticed that? Now, if you're a guy that loves sports, then you'll probably talk about sports before you talk about anything else, or cars, or whatever it might be, or hunting, or whatever. But And if you're dying, it might be tomatoes. But with most people, we end up getting into conversations. Well, did you hear about this person or that person? Well, you know what's going on here. You know what they're like or whatever it might be. And I encounter this every single week. I've been talking about it my entire life. And I call on you in the name of Jesus. And I'm not pointing my fingers at you any more than I'm pointing at myself. Because I can get sucked into it too. But I try not to. But I find myself going there. Do you warn people by your influence? Or do you make them cold? What do you bring in? Warmth or coldness? You're bringing one of the two. You say, well, maybe I'm kind of bringing something in the middle. That could be. That's where a lot of us land a lot of times. I don't think that fits particularly with the idea of lukewarm Christianity, so I'm not going to make that comparison, but sometimes we bring warmth, and sometimes we bring cold, pricklies. We're like a bunch of sand spurs when we come into the room. We start bumping up against people, and they're getting stuck and stabbed and hurt. Instead of a warm fuzzy. The sad thing about the warm fuzzies on the magical island of warm fuzzies is they thought the thing to do when the guy convinced them was to keep them. Guys, that's what we're doing with the gospel of Jesus Christ and the love that Jesus gave for us and proved it to us on the cross so plainly. If we are keeping that to ourselves, then we are not offering any warmth to anybody. The love of Jesus only becomes real when it's given away. When it's real, it's there. And some people find it without the help of others. But most people, the Bible says, how can they believe on somebody they've not heard? And how can they hear without preaching? That doesn't mean a guy like me that stands there with a microphone. That's everybody. It's pretty simple, really. It can really get disturbing if you start watching yourself. Because we are natural, selfish critters. I won't ask you to raise your hand. But if you're circling Walmart, and let's say you're circling somewhere in Magic Kingdom, or you're circling at the Ellington Mall, where you cannot find a parking place within, 50 blocks of this mall that never seems to have anything you're looking for. But how often? Don't answer this question. I'll answer it. If I've been circling looking for a parking place and somebody's behind me, I really can't think of a single time where I finally found a spot and thought, you know what? I'm going to pass by and let that guy have it. Maybe you do that. If you do, God bless you. You have got more warm fuzzies, than the average person. I'm not saying we're wicked and evil people because we do that. We all just want to find a parking place, go in, buy what we need, and get out of there. Unless we're there to shop. And that's only half of the human race, for the most part. The other half is there to conquer, hunt, find what they need, and get back to the car. I don't know what else to do but to give that as the perfect example of what we are. And I'm going to probably do it today. I go to Walmart after church today. I'm going to find the closest place I can, the first chance I get. Probably if there's a car behind me, probably today I'm going to have to pass the place. I'll never be able to live with myself if I don't. Now, I don't think it's a sin. I don't think the Catholic Church has it listed as a venial or cardinal sin, either one, if you don't give a parking place to the poor guy behind you. But isn't it a kind of a comical, simple commentary on human nature? We come out screaming. We come out of the womb screaming, demanding everything. And that's natural. God created it that way. There's not a more selfish, I don't mean this in an evil way, but a self-centered human than a very brand new one. For good reason. You can't find food for yourself. You can't take care of yourself. You've got to scream and ask for help. And that's what we do. But at some point, guys, guess what? You have to begin to teach your children, wait a minute, you can't do that. Nope, you cannot have that. granddaughter that's living in my house right now. She does things with an iPhone that the FBI cannot do. She's 17 months old, and I've seen her 2 different times open an iPhone. Now, you know you really can't do that if you don't know the code. If she does not know the code, she can't even count to 1. By the time she was 6 months old, she's working the screen. Working. I saw her do something with the phone this week, turned it into a book where it was iPhone turned pages sideways. Things I've never even seen before, ads coming out one after another. I've never been able to find that. Well, but she's also at that age, at the point where I have to say, you know, at 17 months, you really don't need an iPhone. Now, this does not go over well. Does not go over well. But we have to break into the natural self-centeredness that's built into us. It's a survival thing in the beginning. And teach our kids. There's times to say no, things you don't get. Because otherwise we will grow up to be giant babies who want to steal everybody's iPhone. What do you bring in? The band, come on up. What do you bring into your house? What do you bring into your job? What do you bring into the church? What do you bring into your kids, to your husband, to your wife? What do you bring into the people you run into and encounter out in the world? Seriously, everybody. Do you warm the room up? And I'm telling you right now, the only way you will ever know the warmth of real love is if you warm other people. That's how you will grow. It'll make you feel different. It go on like that for a long time, so I'm not going to. Can we take these stage lights down? We're just going to be a couple more minutes, but maybe you just turn them off if you guys know how. Let's all stand. If you need to come up for prayer or make a decision, if you want somebody to pray for you, come over here. You don't have to tell them what it is. You just want somebody to come and stand with you. If you want to pray by yourself, come over to this side by the fireplace and just talk to the Lord. Just reach out to Him. Maybe God's speaking to you. Maybe you know now that you're handing out more sand, furs, and stickers than you are warm fuzzies. Just that simple. Maybe you're being too hard, too cruel, not thinking. What it's about. I'm sure glad that Jesus decided to come and give us complete warmth. That's what it is. You come if you need to this morning. Lord, breathe in me, be the sanctuary.